Hey guys, before this video starts, I want to give a big thank you to the Strangest, who wrote and edited this video using stories and footage from visiting each of these universities. They travel to haunted locations all over the world on their channel and do videos on true paranormal stories and unsolved mysteries. So, if you want more stories from these haunted universities, be sure to check out their Haunted University playlist. I've linked below in the description and at the end of this video. It begins with their newest video on the hauntings of Marshall University in West Virginia. I really hope you enjoy true paranormal stories from 4 of the most haunted universities in America. The College of William and Mary was founded on February 8, 1693, under a royal charter issued by King William III and Queen Mary II of England. Located in Williamsburg, Virginia, it is the second oldest institution of higher education in the United States. Tucker Hall has had a strange connection to the high number of suicides at William and Mary. In 2015, there were 4 different student suicides out of over 8,000 students who attended. Tucker Hall was originally built as a library, then housed the law department for 13 years, before coming home to the English department. During the 1980s, a girl hung herself on the 3rd floor of Tucker Hall after a long night of studying. A few years later, another student was found hanging in the exact same spot, with a note that only said, "She made me do it." In 2004, a man killed himself in the building. Many reported a strange girl who comes up to those pulling an all-nighter in the building and asks how their studying is going. If the student says fine, she would tell them, "Then you should call it a night and head to bed." If the student doesn't listen, the girl throws a fit and slams her hands on the walls and tables until they leave. If the student responds that studying is not going well and they think they may fail, the girl tries to convince them to kill themselves to solve all their problems and shortcomings in life. Barrett Hall was once a hotel, then an all-women's dorm, and eventually a freshman dorm. It is one of the most beautiful dorms on campus, with its expansive front porch and splendid lobby. Despite its elegance and prime location on the old part of campus, the building quickly developed a reputation as the most haunted dorm on campus. Barrett's ghost stories originate from the building's locked attic, where students often hear mysterious thumping noises after midnight. Those who manage to get into the empty attic only find a dangling string used to switch on the lights inside. The old attic lights usually just flicker and barely give off enough light to be able to see what is inside the creepy attic. Students often try to sneak into the attic on Halloween and attempt to contact the lingering spirits in the building with an Ouija board. One Halloween, a group of 7 students decided to play with a homemade Ouija board. Each put a hand on the planchette, asked the board a question, and their hands moved in unison as the planchette traveled across the board and back, spelling out answers to their inquiry letter by letter. They had asked if Barrett Hall was haunted, and the board replied with YES. The students quickly ended their attempts to contact whatever remains behind in Barrett. Students also report a ghostly whistling that is heard when they're alone. One of the girls was in the hall bathroom showering at night when she heard whistling echoing from inside the bathroom. When she stepped out of the stall to see who it was, she found that she was alone. Bradfordton is the second oldest building on campus and was originally built for the Indian school. The school is meant to civilize Native American boys by teaching them how to read and write, eventually preparing them to be cultural liaisons or Anglican priests for their tribes. Many of the boys tried to escape, leading to them being locked in Bradfordton at night. You can still hear their suffering, with phantom footsteps, woeful moans, and sobbing coming from the building at night. One Native American fashioned a rope out of bedsheets to escape and run free each night. He was never disciplined because he always returned. However, one night he vanished and was never seen again, leading many to believe he was killed during the night. Sometimes, on a misty night, an Indian boy can be seen running a few feet off the ground through the sunken gardens. He appears to be floating because the sunken garden was not sunken, but rather level with the rest of the campus grounds when he was alive. The Native American ghost is the most commonly seen ghost on campus. Students have a tradition called the William and Mary Triathlon that involves streaking the sunken gardens in a similar way to the Native American ghost running free each night, and also includes swimming the Crim Dell and jumping the old Governor's Wall in colonial Williamsburg. Ohio University was the first university chartered by an act of Congress and was the nation's first institution of higher learning west of the Appalachian Mountains. Established in 1804, today it is a large public research university located in Athens, Ohio. Many consider it to be one of the most haunted universities in the world because of the sheer number of ghosts, haunted buildings, and legends around campus. Wilson Hall is the most famous haunting at the university. Built in 1965, it is a relatively new building considering the number of hauntings and legends that now surround the infamous building. It started in the 1970s when a student living in room 428 mysteriously passed away. Afterwards, each person who stayed in the room reported experiencing some form of paranormal activity. Things in room 428 escalated when a female student living in Wilson Hall began to study the occult and use the energy of the room to communicate with the dead. One night, a ritual went horribly wrong for the girl, which resulted in her violent and bloody death. Some accounts say that she slit her wrist to the bone while attempting to perform a new ritual. The room has been deemed unlivable by the university and has been sealed off. After the tragic deaths, students began to report hearing footsteps in the empty room. The door would violently slam shut, and items left inside would randomly fly across the room and be left in a mess. Shadowy, ghostly figures are often seen roaming the halls of Wilson. The Ridges are a part of the campus that were formerly the Athens Lunatic Asylum, a mental hospital that was open from 1874 until 1993. The asylum treated children and adults suffering from various mental disabilities. It became a popular place for Civil War veterans to seek treatment for the condition that we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder. The initial population of the asylum was 200 patients, but it quickly grew to over 2,000 by the 1900s. More than 3 times the planned capacity for the asylum. The overcrowding led to a drastic decline in the quality of care that patients received. However, the more patients, the more profit. Patients who were able were put to work on the hospital's farm, and the patients that couldn't work or rebelled underwent inhumane and torturous treatments. Patients would be submerged in ice water for extended periods of time. They would have electric shocks administered directly to their temples, and the hospital quickly became known for their lobotomies to treat depressive or psychotic tendencies. Many lobotomy patients ended up dead or left in a catatonic state. Today, the Ridges are used as classrooms, offices, and storage for Ohio University and the Kennedy Museum of Art. However, the former mental hospital's past still lingers with haunting reminders of the building's dark history. A stain of Margaret Schilling's body is etched into the concrete floor of the Ridges. Margaret Schilling was a patient who vanished from her ward, only to be found several weeks later in the abandoned top floor of the old infectious patient ward that had been closed years earlier. They found her naked on the floor with her clothes neatly folded beside her. She had somehow gotten locked inside the old ward, and her body was so badly decomposed that her bodily fluids permanently stained the concrete she died laying on. If you aren't unfortunate enough to see the stain, you may still encounter Margaret Schilling, or one of the many ghosts of former patients and staff, wandering the building at night. Many witness darting shadows and people appearing in mirrors behind them. Many parts of the Ridges that are used for storage or are abandoned are full of asbestos and lead, making it costly to tear down or fully renovate each part that has fallen into disrepair. There are almost 2,000 people buried at the 3 cemeteries located at the Ridges. Of those, 1,659 people have headstones marked only by a number. There were some patients' bodies that were reunited with their families and buried in cemeteries around their homes. In 1943, the state of Ohio began putting names, births, and deaths on the headstones of patients. However, by the 1980s, the state no longer cared for the cemeteries, which made it easy for outsiders to vandalize them, along with nature eroding away the remaining headstones. The stones marking where patients were buried were in desperate need of repair. They were left to the elements, and hundreds of stones were left uprooted and broken, possibly causing the uprooting of hundreds of restless spirits in the graveyard. Salem College began in 1772 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Today, it is the oldest female educational establishment that is still a women's college. The Gramley Building is the site of the college's library where 2 girls were killed in an electrocution accident soon after the building was built. The spirits of the girls appear to students screaming in agonizing pain that has been torturing the girls for eternity. One student reportedly heard the girls on the 3rd floor ask for help. The student instantly got an overwhelming sick feeling and rushed out of the building. Brave students like to attempt to contact the very dark presence that is known as snarl and growl at those who find themselves alone in the Gramley Building. On November 28, 1873, a 16-year-old Salem Academy boarder from Augusta, Georgia, burned to death in the Single Sisters' house. She was practicing piano when an ember from a stove caught her dress on fire, causing her to run through the building. Running only caused the flames to grow before they could be put out. She passed away later that day, and students report seeing a woman in a period dress peering out of the windows of the Single Sisters' house, usually between 2 or 3 in the morning. Is it the girl who died from the horrendous burns? Or is it one of the restless spirits of those who died in the building when it was used as the college's infirmary? Single Sisters has some sort of presence that is very aggressive to those who venture down the old steps to the basement of the building. Students warn, you never know what you might catch a glimpse of while down there. A girl hung herself on the top floor of the Gramley dormitory. Students on the 2nd floor report hearing furniture move in the middle of the night, along with the sounds of marbles dropping from the floor above them. Supposedly, this is the haunting sound of the dresser that the girl moved, and a jar of marbles that was knocked over the night she killed herself. One student had this sinister spirit in her room on the 3rd floor that claimed to be the girl that hung herself. She heard a voice from inside her closet telling her to kill, followed by the sound of faint laughter. There is a little boy who can be seen in one of the bathrooms in the dorm. He only appears in the mirror, and some students will keep marbles in their closet for the ghost of the little boy to play with. Students have also seen a man in black in the basement of the dorm, usually seen in the community kitchen. Sometimes he appears as a full-bodied apparition, but other times only as ominous black smoke. The University of Notre Dame was founded in November of 1842 by Reverend Edward Sorin and is located adjacent to South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame is a large Catholic research university and is well known for its Catholic heritage, tradition, and numerous ghosts and hauntings around campus. Washington Hall has witnessed the most tragedy on campus. Originally built for the music and performing arts department as a musical hall and theater, today it is home to several spirits that make it the most haunted building on campus. In 1886, a steeplejack working on the Flyloft Hall fell to his death. Since his death, unexplainable footsteps on the roof can be heard on quiet nights. In 1919, student professor Jim Menebus passed away in the building. His spirit likes to entertain with a single blast from a French horn or trumpet that can be heard coming from the empty music hall. On a cold night in 1920, the legendary Fighting Irish football player George the Gipper Gipp returned to Notre Dame's campus late after curfew and found his dorm locked. The Gipper went to Washington Hall because he knew the rear door was often left unlocked. However, the door was locked, and the Gipper was forced to sleep outside on the front steps. By the morning, he had contracted pneumonia and eventually died from a strep throat infection due to lack of knowledge of antibiotics at the time. In the hospital, he told his football coach, "When the team is up against it, when things are wrong and the breaks are beating the boys, ask them to go in there with all they've got and win just one for the Gipper. I don't know where I'll be then, but I'll know about it and I'll be happy." After his death, the Gipper's ghost began to be spotted in the early pre-dawn mornings, sitting on the steps of Washington Hall. He has also appeared throughout the theater and green room. People often report the feeling of a light encouraging pat that has been attributed to the Gipper. It is thought that he returned to where he spent his last night on campus to watch over his Fighting Irish. In 1946, Brother Canute Lardner died while watching a movie in Washington Hall. Multiple janitors have seen an elderly Irishman with balding red hair gazing out of a window on the first floor. Some have had the Irishman ask them to open the window, but he vanishes before they can help him. During the 1970s, a few theater students sneak inside Washington Hall late at night and attempt to contact one of the ghosts in the building with an Ouija board. They lit candles and set up the board in the center of the stage. When they asked if there were any spirits that wanted to speak, the planchette slowly moved to the letter S and G, before abruptly moving to the word goodbye on the board. The spooked students quickly packed up their belongings and exited the building. They were talking about what happened in the parking lot of the building when they noticed a flickering light coming from inside Washington Hall. The students hid and watched what was happening inside the building. They watched a nightly security guard come out of the building on his nightly rounds and walk to the next. The letters S and G had been a warning to the students of the approaching security guard. Violent poltergeists have been reported in Washington Hall. Things fly off shelves, doors close unexplainably, music coming from the empty music hall, and people are pushed and have marks left on their bodies by invisible forces. This is all activity that might be caused by one of the ghosts I mentioned earlier, or it might be a more sinister spirit making their presence known on the haunted campus of the University of Notre Dame.